and welcome to Moonshot, a show by Sequoia India and Southeast Asia that profiles innovative startups and inspiring founders who are dreaming big, making an impact, and driving change across the region. I'm your host, Dewi Fabri, and throughout this podcast, we'll be introducing you to founders and thought leaders who are helping shape the region's startup ecosystem. We hope this podcast will give you fresh ideas on how to start and scale an enduring company. Indonesia's stock market has long been dominated by institutional investors, but more retail investors are jumping into the stock market for the first time. Between 2019 and June 2021, the number of retail investors grew 125%. That's nearly 6 million Indonesians now buying stocks and mutual funds. And it's a number that's expected to increase as a new generation of millennial investors look for ways to grow their savings. In 2019, Sigit Kuagam and his co-founder launched Bibit, an app that makes it easy for new investors to wade into the stock market. We're here today with Sigit and Rohit Agarwal, a principal at Sequoia India, Southeast Asia, to talk about what it takes to build trust in a category that's new to consumers. So Sigit, it's so great to have you here with us today. Can you tell us, how did you come up with this idea to launch Bibit?
So Dewi, thanks for having me. So if we look back at the company, it was actually started back in 2013 as a community platform for stock traders. And I think the idea at that time was like, how do we make stock market more inclusive? So we created this platform, and I think basically based on the interaction with the user, we figure out like, when we understand like our users, the questions about like how to buy stocks was actually quite simple to answer, right? People understand you can open an account with a brokerage, you can get someone to help you, assist you to do that. But the question about like what stock to buy was actually a lot more complicated. You need to understand the company fundamentals, you need to understand macro and micro economic factors, you need to understand how the corporate governance of the company is being applied. And I think that is actually like a very complicated to a lot of users. So we asked ourselves the questions like, what do people actually want when they buy stocks? Do they want to gamble? Do they want the excitement out of like buying and selling stocks? Or do they actually want to be a part of the company and also to be a part of like those companies' future? And I think most people want this process to be very easy and simple. And I think that led us to think of like why we created Bibit in the first place. We have a mission to help Indonesians to achieve a secure financial futures. And I think the way to do that is by investing in the right way.
Sigit, that's an area that's still nascent in Indonesia. Rohit, what excited you about Bibit's mission? Where do you see retail investing headed in Indonesia?
I think Sigit touched upon a very important point that Bibit is on a mission to provide a secure financial future for millions of Indonesians. And I think this is the part that resonated the most with us. I think when we met Bibit and we looked at how they're helping millions of Indonesians save towards their long-term life goals, towards goals like buying a house, saving for their kids' education, saving for their emergencies. It was very clear to us that it was taking a more comprehensive approach towards planning a financial future for them. Devi, retail investors in Indonesia have grown more than 10x in the last 5 years, but I think we are just getting started. A combination of factors from increasing awareness to endorsement by the government to promote mutual funds and stocks as a means of saving for first-time earners and millennials, to smartphones and internet access, which provides 24/7 trading interfaces, to digital KYC. We believe as millennials and first-time investors join the market, it's important for them to start their investing journey with confidence. And it's super important for them to have some custodianship, some hand-holding through this process. which I think platforms like Bibit, which enable investors to choose from a diversified portfolio of stocks, mutual funds, bonds, enable and give consumers the confidence to invest for the long term, to save towards their long-term goals and spend time in market. Indonesia is still primarily a cash-based society, and it's very hard for people to deposit their money in an app, or let alone invest in products that they do not fully understand. So I think Sigit would love to understand from you guys, how are you overcoming these challenges, and really how are you getting people to deposit their life savings in an app?
So yeah, I think if we look at the Indonesian market today, I think there are a lot of challenges like what you mentioned, right? I think it mainly revolves around how retail investors perceive the market right now. One is that investing is complex and complicated. Most people don't understand like how the capital markets operates. There are a lot of like different available instruments, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and other type of capital market instruments, and they don't have the time and the experience or like the education level to understand the complexity. So it's always in our mind on like how to make it simple. One of the way to make it simple, I think, is to use technology to really tailor the investment products to people's goals, people's financial situations, and people's risk tolerance. Another part is like how do we, as you mentioned, like a lot of people still transact in cash. So how do we make sure the whole funding of the account become like very seamless? So we built the layers on like how do we connect to the banking system, how do we connect to the e-money and e-wallet players to make the whole process very seamless and integrated into like how they do their daily lives today. And another part is that how people see investments is actually, it is very risky. Not only does it carry like market risk, like type of like a risk that a securities might offer, but actually you face a lot of fraud risk. There are a lot of scams and pyramid schemes in the market. So it's very important that we educate the users and into investing the right way, into investing into the legitimate type of like investment products. And eventually, how do we build trust in a market that is very nascent, where there's a lot of different Ponzi schemes being offered every day to retail investors. So, and another part is, which is also a myth in Indonesia, is that investments is reserved only to the rich. So you need to have a lot of money to start investing. Where when we want to talk about like what is the right way to invest, is we believe that it is to build a low-cost, diversified portfolio by making recurring investments. Do not try to time the market and do it like a savings. Just invest at a given period every month, every week. And we ask ourselves, like, how do we make this whole process simple again? So this is where we look at like countries like India, for example, with like an SIP system that can help people to build like a very low-cost diversified portfolio by doing regular investments into mutual funds. And we try to automate this by working with like banking and like e-money partners to make the whole process seamless. So now people can set like an auto debit into the investment account and deposit their money every month or every week or even every day.
So Sigit, that's really interesting. You've gotten Indonesians to trust the process with Bibit. So what insights have you gleaned? How are people using the app?
I think when we look at it, the way people use the app, there is a lot of learning when we talk to the users. Yeah, I think we understand that they want an easy and simple way to fund the account, monitor the investments, and also like the ability to invest in a bite-sized way into a diversified portfolio of stocks and bonds. That's why we created a way to do an auto debit to your bank account or your e-money account to make this whole process very, very simple so that you can set it once and you can forget about it. And I think this was achieved by, talking very closely to the users. And I think one of the learning that we got here was actually from our landlord in the office. Well, at that time, he asked me, hey, any feedback, any complaint that you might have, tell it directly to me. I'm and because I know them very, very well, I don't want to offend you by telling you this, but he told me that, hey, a tenant complaint is a blessing to me. And I think this is something that struck me very much, that I think the way we interact with our customers should be, the level of service that we provide should be like this, right? You really talk directly to them. So we created a Telegram group. So everyone of the users can actually join the group and they can talk directly to me or my co-founders. And from there, they can give us tips, feedbacks, even complaints. But I think we always take it as the way, if they decided to tell us about their struggles, to tell us about the real problems that they have, I think that is a very, very unique insight that we cannot get anywhere else. And also the fact that they are telling us about it is actually, in a way, a blessing that they decided to give us an input so that we can improve, and not that they just stop using the app and go somewhere else, right? So I think that's how we started to get a lot of these inputs, and we create the product really, really tailored to solving their daily problems. And I think that's how we build the features that we have right now in the app.
And what's one example of a customer complaint that they voiced on this Telegram group that you've worked on, and you've actually built into the app?
Another insight is that, hey, I'm married. I want to sort of save for my kids' educations, and both me and my wife actually have a monthly income. One thing is we have a similar goal. We have a similar, which is to save for our kids' education, and we want to do it together, right? We want to put the money into one single pot where each of us can contribute. And the way we see that, hey, what matters here is actually the goal and how people contribute. If the husband contributes and then the wife creates a separate account, and actually they have to tell it. It's very complicated to do. They have to divide it half. So we created this new feature called Bibit Bareng. So it's actually you can create a shared portfolio where both you and your wife can actually contribute to the same pot, and both of you can monitor it in real time, and both of you can have access to it equally.
Oh, that's great. So it's really making it seamless for, in this example, a married couple to both contribute their income to the shared, household savings.
And Sigit, you're obviously making it very easy for Indonesians to save in mutual funds and create shared portfolios. But also we're seeing massive interest and adoption for stock trading in Indonesia. And I think some of it is driven by new age stocks and tech companies going public, which is driving interest of the younger generation and the millennials into the stock market. And it's still very early days, but it's a promising start. Talk a little bit about what you see as the biggest challenges in the Indonesian market. I mean, Indonesia still has a few large cap companies, and they're obviously growing, and over years there will be many more, and especially from sectors that one would consider newer age and more interesting to millennials. But how are you seeing this ecosystem shape up? And what are some of the biggest challenges and also the opportunities?
So I think it's very interesting, as you mentioned, to see that in the past 1.5 years, I think there's on the demand side there is a lot of interest, especially from the young generation, to try to invest directly into stocks. That is in itself has really created the excitement when it comes to like stock trading. But we have to understand that 95% of Indonesians have less than 3 years of investments experience. And we understand that when it comes to being actively trading stocks, it carries and it takes a lot of educations and it takes a lot of skills to become a profitable, active stock traders. And so I think that is where it's very important to make sure that we improve the education level, the knowledge of like Indonesian when it comes to like a stock market. So they can separate between investing and speculating. I think that is very, very important on the demand side. But when we talk about the supply side, it's quite interesting also that some of the tech companies have started listing in the domestic exchange. We will start seeing more and more large tech companies to list in the domestic exchange in the near future as well. But I think with regards to like the depth of the market itself, right now the market have an average daily trading volume of about like $1 billion, which is still very, very minuscule with respect to like the size of the stock market, the size of the economies. And as more and more companies list on the stock exchange, more and more familiar names to the retail investors, especially the young generations, started to join the capital market, and where people can have access to, again, own part of like these great companies. I think that will create the opportunity going forward.
And Sigit, there is one challenge on the supply side which stems from not having companies which the millennial investors can relate to, products that they have used or names that they have heard of. But there's also a challenge, like a lot of the gratification from stock trading that's driven millennials to trading in the last 18-24 months, and this phenomenon that's playing out globally is driven by products like options and futures, where with a small pot of money you could take large positions, and there's a lot of leverage involved. Obviously these are complex products, but when you get one of those rights early on, you suddenly see your money double or triple in a short span of time, which drives a lot of the millennial investors to talk to their friends about it, and then draws them in. So talk a little bit about how you're seeing that phenomenon in Indonesia, because Indonesia today doesn't have products like options and futures because the regulator deems it too risky for inexperienced investors.
There is a lot of speculative behavior in the market, and there is a lot of excitement. And of course, in the past few months, we see like one of the strongest market rally coming from a rebound that was happening from the dip back in March 2020. And obviously, everyone is a genius when the market is rallying in one direction and going up, and you keep making the right investments or like trading decisions. But I think it's very important to understand that to a lot of retail investors, using leverage or complicated structured products is very, very risky, and they need to understand the risk involved. You can use more than the amount of the capital that you contributed. And In Indonesia, the way we see it as well is that futures and option markets is not non-existent in the local stock exchange. We do not have any liquidity with regards to like this complex products where if we look at some of the other countries, actually the depth of the market is really contributed by this futures and option products, and it can sometimes amount to like 10x to like the regular like delivery stocks trades. So I think this is also something that needs to be solved going forward. As the market started to mature, there is more depth into the market. There is ability for people to write these options, write these futures contracts, and have the ability to hedge them in the market. Then we will start seeing like more and more liquidity with regards to like futures and options and derivatives products. But of course, on the other side, we have to be mindful of whether people have the right set of tools, the right set of knowledge and understanding with regards to these complex products.
And Sigit, that's a super important point. Like, for people to understand the risks involved in different products. I mean, risks lie on a spectrum when you are investing in mutual funds, to when you're investing in equity-only mutual funds, to when you're investing in stocks, and when you're trading derivatives like, futures and options, or when you're, margin borrowing and buying stocks. And obviously, as you pointed out, we are coming off of the biggest, one of the longest bull cycles in capital markets all around the world. So what are you doing to educate customers about these inherent risks, and how are you making sure that they are using options, futures, leverage, or even picking stocks in a responsible way?
So we just actually launched Bibit Academy. This is basically an education content that we distribute for free to our apps, so that people can really learn about, like, again, how to invest in the right way. And I think we try to make it simple for people to understand. We try to break it down into like bite-sized content and materials. We deliver like quizzes at the end of like each content to make sure that people get what was the points that was trying to be delivered. And the idea is for this is like we try to educate users about like the time-tested investment principles that has been proven to be the sustainable way to be a long-term investors in the capital market. Because one of the idea of to be an investor is that you should one is that it's very hard to time the market. It's very hard to guess the market directions in the short term, but you can have a more educated sort of like analysis with regards to like understanding the companies, understanding the business, understanding the dynamic of the landscape of the competitive landscape of the business that the company is doing. I think those, again, is the idea is like how do we empower people with the right tools so that they can identify what is the characteristic of a great companies, and I think they can buy the stocks and to be part and own part of those like great companies going forward.
Educating your users, that really goes a long way to building trust with them. Rohit, as you look back over your time working with Sigit and the team at Bibit, what advice would you give aspiring founders as they look to build trust with their consumers?
I think, Devi, trust is a very interesting topic, and I think not just with your customers, but in any relationship, building trust happens over time. There are moments in any journey when you're tested, and the decisions and actions you take in those moments. And who do you place first? Do you place yourself first? Do you place your company first? Do you place your team first? Or do you place your customers first? Decide whether customers can trust you in a long journey. And I think most people that are signing up on platform like Bibit are trusting the platform to do the right thing for them, not just today, but over a period of time that could be several years. So I think the thing that has probably impressed us the most about Sigit and the leadership team has been that they have always put customers first. They understand that in addition to meeting business targets and driving the business forward, they have a huge responsibility where the financial prosperity of a lot of families depends on how their investments in Bibit platform do, and they take that very, very seriously. And I think this builds a lot of trust with customers. They understand that Bibit is prioritizing their financial safety, their financial prosperity over companies' short-term goals or profits. I think what also builds trust is if you can deliver what you promise. So it's always a good idea to under-promise and over-deliver, which I think the Bibit team has again done. They have been very consistent on not promising investment returns or not marketing to consumers in a way that brings them with an expectation of a short-term profit or a short-term rich by the night goals. So I think that's building trust and patience. And I would say the last thing which all founders should practice, or that I've seen good founders practice when they're looking to build trust with their customers, is to make sure that whenever these customers, like what Sigit mentioned, can customers reach out to founders? Do they have a face? I mean, nobody really trusts a logo. People trust a face. And do they know a face? Do they know somebody's name who they can reach out to when things go wrong or when they need any assistance? And I think it's super important to establish direct channels of communication, especially in the early days with your customers, because these customers are going to be your ambassadors of trust who go and tell their friends and families about how Bibit stood by them, or any company stood by them when they needed them. I think these are some things which I've seen good founders practice in building trust with their customers.
Those are some really insightful takeaways for aspiring founders, as they strive to build trust with their customers. Sigit, what are 3 pieces of advice you'd like to give someone who's just starting out on their company building journey?
Instead of giving 3 tips, I think because we are still learning a lot, I think I would give 3 questions to ask themselves before they start building a company. I think the first one will be, ask yourself how comfortable you are with uncertainty. I think in the early days, there will be a lot of moments, decisions to be made. There's a lot of things that you have to decide with a very limited set of informations. And I think that is a very important trait, I think, to build company in the early days. So again, ask yourself that questions if you are comfortable with uncertainties. The second one is perhaps ask yourself, what do you give up by starting this entrepreneurship journey? Is that what do you lose, and can you bear that opportunity cost? I think that is the second question. And I think probably the third question is, if money is no object to you, will you still be doing this anyway? Right? I think if the answers are yes to those 3 questions, then after thinking very hard and carefully about it, then if you decided to make the leap, then don't look back and enjoy the journey.
You've clearly taken the plunge, and I hope you're enjoying yourself on your company building journey. Rohit, Sigit, it's been a really insightful chat on how Indonesians are looking to invest, and more importantly, how to build trust with your customers. Thank you both for taking the time to join us today. I'm Dewi Fabri, and for more interesting startup stories, visit our website, sequoiacap.com, or follow us on Spotify.